Good evening. This is TVRI's English News Service bringing you the latest reports from throughout the world. In the headlines, the Iraqi government say they are willing to allow UN arms inspectors into presidential sites.
A massive fire strikes in central Moscow, injuring 3 women. Here at home, President Suharto named General Wiranto as the new commander of the armed forces, while Golkar puts forward 2 candidates, Parliamentary Speaker Harmoko and Research Technology Minister B.J. Habibi, for the post of Vice President. Now the news in detail.
Iraq is open to discussion on its proposals for UN arms inspections of presidential sites, but cannot understand why its proposals for inspections have not been accepted. Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz said Wednesday that his government was willing to allow inspectors to look at the sites and take away test samples for further analysis.
If military action goes ahead, it'll be the personnel of the USS Washington, among others, who deliver the blow. And it was to that aircraft carrier William Cohen came to bolster morale. Ending his Gulf tour, Cohen told the pilots and sailors they were the steel and the sword of freedom.
You're the ones who really are the ones who keep the United States the superpower that it is. It's the best and the brightest that we have to offer our country and to the world, and you reflect that.
In Egypt, Iraq's foreign minister offered a compromise based on a Russian-French initiative. Experts designated by the UN Secretary-General could examine 8 disputed sites within a defined time frame, he told Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. But that's not enough for the Americans, who say there should be no time limits.
What's not enough? To enter the site, to take samples in order to check them in laboratories, and to excavate when there is a suspicion. What's not enough? This is fully enough.
The 6 member states of the Gulf Cooperation Council, including Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, met to coordinate their response to the crisis. Few support military action. A catastrophe, says the UAE. They press for diplomacy. Delegates to an Iraqi-organized Islamic Congress in Baghdad marched to the UN offices, showing solidarity with Iraq, calling for a holy war against America and Britain. In Kuwait, there's the feeling they've been here before. Public service announcements give instructions in case of attack. The borders with Iraq have been closed and the army put on alert. The government says it's just a precaution.
The safest place to be now is in Kuwait, so don't worry about it.
Kuwait is one of the few Gulf states prepared to allow US forces to launch attacks from its soil. No ground assault has been suggested, but if one's needed, this will be a main staging area.
The United States is continuing last-minute efforts to avert military conflict with Iraq, even as President Bill Clinton rejected the latest overtures from Baghdad aimed at resolving its disputes with the United Nations weapons inspectors.
Now, there is no proposal which is set in concrete. The thing is evolving, and there are still negotiations on some of the issues, and they're not solved yet.
We are coming with a slightly amended and consolidated draft resolution on that to the experts of the 15 members of the Security Council today. We want to get on with that as fast as possible in order to give the Secretary-General the support he needs for his proposals, and also to bring the help that's needed to the Iraqi people. I'm sorry that the Iraqi authorities appear unable to swallow that requirement. But then, I think this speaks volumes about where the real priorities lie. Thank you.
We don't think there should be any deals or compromises. We feel very strongly that there should be clear, unfettered access to all sites by UN inspectors, and that the full integrity of UNSCOM should be maintained.
So do you reject that?
We don't believe that is. Let me say that we think the Russian and the French proposals are very serious, and they're well-intentioned, but we have reservations about any proposal that does not comply fully with UN Security Council resolutions.
U.S. Defense Secretary William Cohen, who is in Moscow Wednesday on a last-ditch attempt to convince Russia that Iraq must be bombed, is unlikely to succeed, say hardline Russian parliament members.
William Cohen is in Moscow. He's there to discuss what are described as bilateral security issues with senior Russian officials. But he said if the Iraqi issue is raised, he will explain the U.S. position. En route to Russia from Bahrain, Cohen spoke to reporters about his talks with Arab allies.
We have, as you know, completed our tour of the Gulf, and I felt it went very well, and sent with a mission, and believe the mission was accomplished. Earlier today I met with General Zinni, and he felt that based on our travels together and our discussions with all of the leaders, as he indicated, he now feels, as he did perhaps before, but nonetheless feels more confident than ever that he has all that he would need in order to carry out any military operation.
President Suharto instructed security officials and law enforcement agencies to stand firm and act without hesitation towards those who violate the law.
The President's instruction was given during a meeting with military officials at Bina Graha, Jakarta this morning. The head of state said that under the current circumstances, there are several factions that are trying to use this opportunity to achieve their political agenda, where previously they had failed to do so democratically and constitutionally. These particular groups have spread baseless rumors with the intention of creating panic and a sense of uneasiness among the people, which could disturb national stability. The President was also concerned about certain small groups who claim to be democratic, but they do not appear to act democratically. Meanwhile, the head of state requested the military to help reassure safety for the upcoming People's Consultative Assembly. In another event, the Minister of the State Secretariat, Murdiono, announced the changing of the Chief of the Armed Forces and the Chief of the Army based on the President's letter of instruction dated February 11th of this year.
Just ahead on TVRI News, Indonesia will soon conduct the handing over of its ABRI Commander-in-Chief from the incumbent General Faisal Tanjung to General Wiranto. Also earlier today, 2 candidates for the next vice president were announced by Chairman of DPP Golkar, Abdul Ghafur.
And from Italy, President Yeltsin ends his tour of duty, and we have the latest on the aftermath of the earthquake in Afghanistan. But first, here's our report on Indonesia's new Commander-in-Chief.
General Wiranto will be appointed ABRI's new commander, replacing General Faisal Tanjung on the 16th of this month. An estimated 100 reporters, foreign and domestic, will attend the event for the handover of the Armed Forces Chief in Cilangkap. The Chief of the Armed Forces, accompanied by the Assistant of Public Planning, Major General Agus Wijoyo, and ABRI's Chief of Information, Brigadier General A.W. Mokodongan, also announced that ABRI's new Chief of Staff for Social Politics will be Major General Bambang Yudhoyono, and the new Army Chief will be Lieutenant General Subagio. The Chief of the Armed Forces also discussed the meeting between the military's high-ranking officials regarding the growing tension in Indonesia caused by the ongoing monetary crisis and economic and political situation. The meeting, conducted on the 10th and 11th of last month, intended to help and support Indonesia's current situation. Meanwhile, in answering questions concerning Sofian Wanandi, the Chief of the Armed Forces explained that the case is still being investigated. When asked about the next candidate for Vice President, Faisal Tanjung explained that the ABRI faction will soon announce the candidate who is best suited for the job.
The chairman of Golkar announced nomination of Haji Harmoko and Professor B.J. Habibie as candidates for the Vice President of Indonesia.
After an internal meeting last night, Golkar, the leading political party, represented by the chairman of Golkar, Abdul Ghafur, announced their decision to nominate Haji Harmoko, who is also the head of the People's Consultative Assembly, along with the Minister of Technology and Research, B.J. Habibie, as candidates for the future vice president. The Golkar party acclaimed Harmoko as their first candidate, whereas Professor B.J. Habibie was chosen by 3 officials, among them head of the Indonesian Leadership Organization, General Secretary Ari Mariono, and Golkar Treasurer Bambang Triatmojo, after being given a list of potential names and a list of essential criteria for the vice presidency. According to Abdul Ghafur, in the near future, both candidates are to be briefed by the Golkar chairman.
Russian President Boris Yeltsin wound up his 3-day visit to Rome on Wednesday by witnessing the signing of a $550 million investment deal by Italy's Fiat to build cars in Russia.
The Grand Hotel in Rome was the setting for the climax of Boris Yeltsin's 3-day visit to Italy. The Russian president is lauding the trip, which saw business deals worth more than $4 billion agreed. At the signing of a joint oil and gas exploration deal, Yeltsin said Italians had distinguished themselves by their sense of initiative. The visit has shown a warm relationship between the president and the Italian Prime Minister Romano Prodi. A deal between Fiat and the Russian car maker Gaz makes the Italian company the first in the West to set up a production line in Russia. It'll turn out 150,000 cars a year. The pomp and ceremony crowned a trip during which Yeltsin said 12 cooperation agreements were signed. Italy is Russia's second biggest European trading partner after Germany. Both sides hope to build on the current two-way trade figure of $6 billion a year. The two leaders ended the trip with a clear sign of affection, and Yeltsin headed back to Moscow. On Monday, he said he came to Rome to collect billions. He went home a happy man.
8 workers have warned that the death toll in Afghanistan earthquake could rise as snow blocked all efforts to reach thousands of people stranded with little shelter or food. Here is a report.
After a week of waiting, aid finally arrives for the survivors of the earthquake. But their suffering is far from over. This aid is not nearly enough for the thousands who have lost almost everything. Aid workers are finding it difficult to reach the devastated villages which lie in rugged mountains. There are few roads, and fresh snow and overcast skies are making travel to the area risky. With temperatures dropping below freezing, aid agencies are eager to reach the homeless, many of whom have only blankets for protection. More than 4,000 people are thought to have survived the earthquake. Many of the injured have started pouring into Rostak's hospital. Tents have been set up to treat the wounded, many suffering from burns and fractures. Many others are also leaving their villages for Rostak in search of shelter and food. They huddle together to keep warm, hoping for the weather to improve and more supplies to reach them. Aid workers call them the lucky ones. They're worried about those left behind. They believe thousands more could be trapped in villages too weak to leave and could die if they can't be reached soon.
And coming up next is our mini feature segment. One of Indonesia's popular tourist spots situated in the rainy town of Bogor, West Java, is the famous botanical gardens, which houses hundreds of rare flora species.
And tonight we'll explore the abundant plant life, including the world's largest Rafflesia flower, as TVRI's Franz Nangin takes us a tour throughout the venue. Stay with us as more global news when we return after this.
Bogor is 60 kilometers south Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, reachable within 45 minutes by drive via the Jagorawi Highway, where visitors has to pay 6,000 rupiah for the toll-gate of highway. The area lies 200 meters above sea level, bordered on the south by Mount Salak, 2,211 meters, Pangrango, 3,109 meters, and Gede Mountain, 2,850 meters. Being on the more exposed uplands on the foot of the mountains, Bogor enjoys cool weather and mountain breeze. Rainfalls often, sometimes last the whole day, that makes Bogor called the City of Rain. For many years, the city has been the popular weekend and holidays resort, famed with the wonderful botanical garden, Bogor Palace, Zoological Museum, and the mountain resorts of Puncak, 30 kilometers to the south. One of the well-known tourist destinations is Botanical Garden. It is situated in the downtown and easy to find transportation to go. Bogor Botanic Gardens opens daily from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Except Sundays, private cars are allowed to enter into the area. The ticket is 2,000 rupiah for everyone on the office hours, but 1,000 rupiah on holiday. The crowded day is always on Sunday or public holiday such as Christmas or Hari Raya. According to Abdul Samad, the public relations and guide of Bogor Botanical Garden, the number of tours rises up every year. In 1992, 800,000 visitors. In 1993, more than 1 million. And in 1994, was more than 1.5 million people. 60% of tourist numbers are from local tourists, and 4% is from Germany and the Netherlands. The Bogor Botanic Garden is a living museum with the most complete tropical plants collection in the world. Some of them are rare species are found here. Situated on 87-hectare land, the Bogor Botanic Garden maintains 3,504 species, belongs to 199 families. The planting is arranged according to the plant evolution level, hence the continuance of location.
So, Bogor Botanical Garden, as we know, it is the famous garden in the world. So we have a lot of point of interest, such as bamboos. There are more than 25 different kinds of bamboos, and huge trees or woody trees like a meranti, thick wood, mahogany, ironwood, and so on and so forth. And of course, we have some beautiful places in Bogor Botanical Garden.
Yeah, it's a very nice garden. I think I just saw a little bit, and we start just with the tour. But what I see so far, it's very nice.
It's lovely.
Lovely, beautiful.
We look wider and we can see it.
We look around and we see the shell schildpad there in the water. No, it's nice. So.
Well, I think it's very nice, and it's very, very useful for education of people and to bring respect for the nature for the people, you see. And well, from that point of view, I think it's very important for the education of the many people who live here in Java, to let them be very careful with the nature they have, and it's so beautiful, you see.
The historical of Botanical Garden started with Professor C.G.C. Reinwarth, a botanic of German descent living in Indonesia in the early 19th. He insisted that the plant exploration as well as agricultural issues belonged to his assignment in the East Indies. He wrote to the General Commissary in Batavia to allow him to use a piece of land to do research on plants' benefits. Later, the garden proved to be a beneficial garden education place for agriculture instructor as well as plants collection. The research result was disseminated to the other gardens. Formerly, the area was 47 hectares and was founded at the backyard of Buitenzorg Palace, later known as Bogor Palace. Inside, visitors can choose some interesting places to see. One of them is historical sites. This garden owns buildings of past centuries constructed even before its founding, like the Dutch graveyard. There sits Lady Raffles Memorial, the gravesite of wife Sir Raffles, the English governor who took power in East Indies between 1811 to 1815. In the west of Botanical Garden, there is an Astrid Avenue. The story why this avenue called Astrid, because Queen Astrid of Belgium visited the garden in 1929. To commemorate her, the broad boulevard from East Gate was named Astrid Avenue. The middle part of the avenue is planted with colorful canna hybrida, looking exactly like Belgian flag. Down the Astrid Avenue, there is a giant water lily. The giant water lilies of Brazil, Victoria amazonica, grow in the palace pound and in the pond at the end of the Astrid Avenue. The trunk is full with cyctis and its leaves have a diameter of 1.5 meters, blooming in the middle of the night and closing in the sunset. It has white flowers which become pink after 2 to 3 days. Besides Astrid Avenue, there are a lot of Indonesian high-quality woods. The ironwood, ebony, diospyros, mahoni, jack, as well as merbau or Insia bijuga. At the main gate, there is Campassia, also known as the king tree. The tree shoots upward to 40 meters and are slim.
And now it's time to check out the latest stock figures from the world's leading exchanges, followed by news from Russia on a recent fire disaster.
And for our closing item, we go over to Germany with highlights of the 40th Berliner Film Festival. But before that, here's today's business and financial update.
Wall Street's Dow Industrial Average sailed to its second straight record on Wednesday. The Dow gained 19 points to close above the 8,300 mark for the first time. It's a different story for Asia's major stock markets. Hong Kong's Hang Seng is losing 165 points, or more than 1.5%. Indonesia's Jakarta index is off 38 points, or more than 7.75%. But the Indonesian rupiah is continuing its recent rally, now at 6,700 rupiah to the US dollar. In the Philippines, the stock market is down more than 2%. And Singapore's Straits Times is also losing more than 2%. Japan's trade surplus rose by nearly 60% in 1997, the first increase in 4 years. The total account surplus for 1997 reached $92.6 billion US dollars. A weakening yen and economic turmoil across Asia contributed to an imbalance between Japanese imports and exports.
Women were injured Wednesday in a fierce blaze that swept through a 6-story office block in central Moscow, forcing employees up to the roof to escape the flames. Helicopters were dispatched to rescue people stranded on the roof. Some people still trapped in the buildings in the early evening were leaning out of windows and waving scarves to attract the firemen's attention. The building includes offices of the Russian Merchant Navy Ministry. About 50 fire engines and 30 ambulances were at the scene, and the 3 injured women were taken to hospital. The renowned Bolshoi Theater, just 300 meters away from the fire, had to delay its performance by half an hour.
Germany's cinema industry is enjoying a boom, but Hollywood movies still crowd out local entries at this year's Berliner Film Festival, which opened on Wednesday night. The 40th Berliner, the 12-day event that ranks among Europe's top 3 festivals, began with 7 Hollywood entries in the competition and just 2 German productions. 25 films are competing for the Golden Bear Award, the top honor which confers huge publicity and major box office clout. Hundreds of other films will be screened in the festival's non-competition events. Trailing only the Cannes Film Festival and rated alongside Venice in prestige, the Berlinale has become an important early-year event for Hollywood studios and actors alike, hoping to generate excitement for the films. But German film critics complain that the organizers have failed to take into account the revival of the domestic film industry, which has surged in popularity in recent years and is packing cinemas across Germany.
And that's the news for tonight. Be sure to tune in again tomorrow evening for more news and information at the same time and channel.
We are Isnomo and Aprilia Subroto. Thank you for joining us and good night.